The king is dead.
He told me you wish for Aegon to be king.
None can know who you are or what you seek.
The door remains shut until we finish our business.
What of Rhaenyra?
This is seizure, and it's treason at the least.
I found out something you should know.
Have you never imagined yourself on the Iron Throne?
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my House of the Dragon Episode 9 trailer video. There's a whole bunch of Easter eggs and references, so we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, I'll be doing videos for all the episodes, just like I did for the original Game of Thrones series. Be sure to subscribe to get them. Careful for spoilers from Episode 8 if you haven't seen it yet, because we have to talk about that to explain what's happening during Episode 9. But the king is dead, long live the king. So King Viserys died at the end of Episode 8, so this is the aftermath, immediately after the events of his death. At the beginning of the trailer, it seems like they start with the Iron Throne in the middle of the night, and it's been right after his death. Alicent just left him, and she says she understood what he was telling her to do. She mistakenly believed that he was telling her that Aegon II should be king, naming him successor, and unite the realm. Otherwise, terrible things would happen. So because she's so hardcore about duty, about doing what people ask her to do, especially people in power like the king himself, she did her duty laying underneath him for years and years and years. Even though it sounds like initially she never wanted to marry him in the first place, but it was her duty to do so. So it sounds like she believes something terrible might wind up happening if she doesn't make Aegon II the next king. It's not a thing where she wants power for herself or she wants the Iron Throne for herself, even though Princess Rhaenys is whispering in her ear, telling her that. Have you never imagined yourself on the Iron Throne? And I think she'll have a similar reaction to what we saw during Episode 8 from her at the head of the Small Council. She seemed a little annoyed with her father and Vaemond for trying to play the Game of Thrones, so to speak. Like, they were very clearly trying to form an agreement with each other, like, you name me heir of Driftmark, and he'll make it a much more profitable arrangement for the throne. You see Alicent also at the head of the Small Council again, but it still seems like it's early in the morning, like they just learned about his death, because I don't think that Alicent thought that he died after she left him. Someone probably discovered in the wee hours of the morning when they went to check on him, so like a couple hours may have gone by. She seems very crestfallen, but you see Criston Cole and her father standing next to her, very important because they're like the most hardcore Team Green at the moment. You see one of the Kingsguard sharpening his sword. That's just to imply everything that they do during the trailer here. Like, they basically lock all the blacks in their rooms to prevent any kind of struggle when they try to put Aegon on the Iron Throne. Like, they want to crown him and they want to pull this off before Team Black can get to their dragons or do anything. This might have something to do with the heir being named and everybody just going a little bit crazy hearing that the king has died. It's not totally clear what Aemond is doing. This is much later in the day when the other lords, the rest of court, has found out what has happened, and Otto Hightower is basically telling them the wishes of the king is for Aegon II to be named king. He's basically forcing all the ones who are here to swear fealty to Aegon II, which is sort of like a dark mirror for Episode 1 when everybody swore fealty to Rhaenyra as the heir. This shot of Aemond with the Kingsguard and someone sitting in foreground here all blurry is Aegon II wearing Aegon the Conqueror's crown. So they actually pull out Aegon the Conqueror's crown to do this. Remember, it's Valyrian steel. It's the only crown that's Valyrian steel. They basically had it in storage ever since Maegor died. Maegor was like the next person after Aegon the Conqueror to wear it. When Aegon the Conqueror's son, Aenys, became king, he wore a different crown. And so different people wear different crowns just based on their personal preference or based on the context. So for instance, King Jaehaerys had like a small rebellion against King Maegor, and when he became king when he was a young child, he wore a different crown because the realm had just sat under this really terrible person who had been wearing Aegon's crown. So that's why he wanted to wear a different crown. And when Viserys became king, he just continued wearing Jaehaerys' crown. So the whole issue in this mad rush of the Greens to put Aegon on the Iron Throne and crown him, and the Blacks trying to figure out what's going on and get free, is what winds up happening to the actual physical crowns themselves. And it sounds like Rhaenyra winds up getting away with her father Viserys' crown. And that's why the Greens use Aegon the Conqueror's crown to put on Aegon II. Because otherwise they would have just put Viserys' crown on his head. You also remember that right now in the timeline, just based on the changes during this recent time jump, Aemond seems like a big wild card. He's sort of like the flip side of Daemon. It seems like they're developing him as more of a rival for Daemon than the younger characters like you would expect. He even looks kind of like Daemon. In fact, when the first trailer initially dropped last year, people confused him for Daemon. Like, oh, why is Matt Smith wearing an eye patch? And if you think about it, Aemond is just an anagram of Daemon. So I think they just want to present them like flip sides of two coin. Like Aemond is a little more chaotic than Daemon has become in his old age. Like Daemon used to be a little bit more like that, but he's kind of chilled out in his old age. They're kind of building a big conflict between the two of them that they'll play out during the actual Dance of the Dragons in later seasons. Like a much bigger fight between the two of them. It's kind of like Ned Stark versus Jaime Lannister in the first couple of episodes of Game of Thrones, where Ned Stark basically told Jaime that I don't want to show someone what I'm capable of in case there actually is a fight. And they never wound up paying off that fight, like Jaime Lannister kept challenging him. This time, though, we'll actually get to see a version of Daemon fighting Aemond. When Otto Hightower is talking to the Kingsguard here, telling him you have to be secret, nobody can know who you are, what you're trying to find, I think it's him trying to find Viserys' crown. You see all the blacks locked in their rooms, Rhaenyra, everybody just trying to figure out what's going on. Like, why have you locked us in our chambers? Why won't you let us leave? News of the king's death also probably spreads pretty fast around the castle, so even though they do get locked in their rooms, they probably find out what has happened pretty quickly. These are just the regular palace guards. You see the woman here who was working for Mysaria and also knew about what happened with Aegon's bastard. There's also a very Targaryen-looking small child that seems like it's been living in Flea Bottom, which might be one of the bastards of one of these characters. That might be what Aemond is doing in Flea Bottom, like going to kill all the bastards, the same way that Joffrey did the same thing when he was getting ready to be named king. On the orders of Joffrey, the Kingsguard and the City Watch basically went around killing all of Robert's bastards that they could find. Obviously, they didn't know about Gendry at the time. I'm assuming this child actually comes from Aegon II just because he sleeps around so much. They made so many jokes about it during episode 8. The reason why they would want to do something like that is because they want as few people in the line of succession as possible. Because if they found a bastard, potentially somebody could try to put him on the Iron Throne. Like Gendry was legitimized by Daenerys, so potentially now he has a claim to the Iron Throne once Bran dies. Obviously, Bran probably gonna live for a really long time though. It seems like Larys Strong is talking to Alicent about Aegon's bastard. Then the real big thing that's going on here too is you see Kingsguard seeming like they're fighting other Kingsguard. If you remember during episode 8, Alicent confused one of the Kingsguard, Eric, for his twin brother, also named Eric, between an E and an A, like they had the same name, just separated by one letter. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry for confusing you for your brother. I think they'll pay that off in this episode. There'll be some twist with the brothers, because you see them walking in the crowd too, and one of them handing what seems like Viserys' crown to Team Black. And just generally, the Kingsguard's loyalties are divided. So the idea is that while Team Green is trying to name Aegon II the successor officially in King's Landing, Rhaenyra in Team Black also name her the next Queen of Westeros. So you have two different people wearing crowns, a divided allegiance from the Kingsguard, so some of the Kingsguard wind up supporting her, and some of the other people in the realm, and the other half supporting Team Green. During episode 7, Criston Cole remarked on something similar to this, where he said the Kingsguard have never had to protect Prince from other Prince before. And Alicent yells at him, no, you serve me, you don't serve the king, do what I say, not what the king says. And it was just meant to set up the whole idea of the divided allegiance of the Kingsguard. Lord Beesbury, during the small council meeting, just screaming about how they're committing high treason by trying to pull off this coup, so to speak. I think he's just bristling because of what they're doing and why they're doing it so quickly without bothering to have a conversation with Rhaenyra or anybody from Team Black. This just looks like the Gold Cloaks, the City Watch, inside the current version of the Great Sept, getting ready to name Aegon to the Iron Throne. Remember, it's a lot easier to sway the allegiance of the Gold Cloaks, and it's a lot easier to become a member of the Gold Cloaks. Like, they don't have to be celibate, they get paid a little bit less, so the rules aren't quite as strict as they are for actual Kingsguard. But remember, Daemon is the one who created the Gold Cloaks, so a lot of their allegiance also lies with him, and he is firmly Team Black. Even when Aegon the Conqueror became King of Westeros and the crown was put on his head, it was actually the High Septon of the day that did it, that performed the actual ceremony. So they have to do something similar with Aegon II, like they have to get him to this version of the Great Sept that we saw in a previous episode and have the current High Septon place Aegon's crown on his head. They also confirm my theory that somebody literally grabs Aegon II out of bed, just barely awake, kicking and screaming, dragging him to be crowned. Like, they're in the Great Sept here, Aegon II still seems like he has no idea what's going on. Like, why are you waking me up so fast? Why are you dragging me across town? And they have to force him to put the crown on, but he wants nothing to do with it. Just like Jon Snow, he doesn't want it. This is actually the commoners at the Dragon Pit, so obviously different shot, totally different scene. It just seems like they're going crazy over the succession, and obviously a big point of contention is the dragons themselves. And that's one of the big things that Otto Hightower is trying to prevent Rhaenyra and her supporters from getting access to their dragons. So one of the biggest things to remember here is that even though Otto Hightower very clearly playing the Game of Thrones and trying to pull off this coup super fast, Alicent is kind of watching all this happen, thinking that she's doing the right thing, but not totally sure about it. Like, they want you to sympathize with her just a little bit because she's not trying to get power for herself. Like, she doesn't actually want to be on the Iron Throne herself. The way that Rhys Evans talks about his character is also kind of funny too. He says he believes in his head that he's doing the right thing for the realm. But secretly what's happening is he's really just benefiting himself, his own house.
We play an ugly game. And now, for the first time, I see that you have the determination to win it.
It's one of those situations where people do very terrible things, but keep telling themselves that they're trying to uphold justice, the law, do what is right. On the flip side of that, you have Rhaenyra, though, who's very clearly breaking a lot of the rules. Like, her sons are bastards. Technically, per the rules, they shouldn't be allowed to sit on the Iron Throne, even though her sons with Daemon are legitimate. Technically, there'd be no issue in Aegon III or Viserys II sitting on the Iron Throne. The way that Emma Darcy talks about her character, about her older version of Rhaenyra, is that there were all these lessons that were taught to her, like, you'll have to stop doing all these crazy things once you actually become the heir, and she says that the message just kind of blew past her, like she didn't completely get the message, that she would have to stop certain behaviors, like sleeping with Harwin Strong. Thus, you get to a situation where she believes that she's entitled to become the heir because her father named her the heir, even though she broke a bunch of the rules. So it's one of those situations where they want nobody to feel like they're completely in the right, like on both sides, they're both just a little bit terrible, doing terrible things to each other. And that's one of the tragedies of the Dance of the Dragons. The other important thing is what's going on with the commoners in this big riot that could potentially be developing in King's Landing. Back in episode 4, Daemon was like, you need to pay attention to the commoners. They made this big deal about how the commoners actually didn't care about the succession. Like, there was this whole idea when she was younger about her being named heir, but nobody really respecting her the way that she wanted to. And Daemon showing her the play in Flea Bottom was basically to let her know that the commoners didn't care about any of that stuff. The only thing the actual commoners care about is stability. They don't actually care who their king or queen is. It could be anybody from any of the houses. As long as there is stability in the realm, that's all they want. So the whole idea of Team Green versus Team Black and all the injustices that are dealt between the families, all the insults, everything, the commoners don't care about any of that stuff. So while you have this big civil war that's brewing within their family, also pay attention to what's happening with the commoners, and remember there's a growing influence of the Faith of the Seven. That'll also probably become a bigger thing in future seasons. During the main series Game of Thrones, the High Sparrow, the High Septon of that day, wound up becoming a big problem for the crown. We'll see if something similar winds up happening in future seasons. But if you spotted any other Easter eggs and references in the trailer that I didn't talk about in the video, just write it below in the comments. In my full episode 9 video, we'll post next Sunday after they release it. While you wait for everything, everyone click here for my full episode 8 video, and click here for all my other House of the Dragon videos. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.